What is up, guys? Rick is here, and today we're going to be going over the Year 1 exotics with the potential to be remade in Destiny with the Rise of Iron expansion. Now, of course, being remade really just means that infusion will be added to them. Infusion is continuing as the way to level up your gear in Destiny with the Rise of Iron, so every weapon that currently has infusion will be able to be increased to the new max light level. However, some Year 1 exotics still don't have this ability and therefore are likely to be finally getting that installed with the Rise of Iron. Now, we do know of 2 confirmed Year 1 exotics that are coming back. Firstly, of course, the Gjallarhorn, or essentially the Iron Gjallarhorn if you pre-order the game, will be finally reinstated into Destiny, one of the most iconic weapons in the game. Very happy to see it coming back with the Rise of Iron. Another weapon that has been, of course, confirmed is the Thorn. It is a very notorious, I will say, gun from Year 1, always had a huge force in the Crucible, and that also has been confirmed to be coming back with the Rise of Iron, with yet another very probably difficult quest that you have to embark on to go out and actually acquire this weapon, just like how you got it in the first place with the exotic bounty in Year 1. But what are the other Year 1 exotics that haven't yet been remade that could be coming with the Rise of Iron? Well, firstly, we have basically what was the main competition to the Gjallarhorn in Year 1, which was the Icebreaker. The Icebreaker was an unbelievably powerful gun. There were times when you'd actually have to choose between the Gjallarhorn and the Icebreaker, and to be honest, sometimes the Icebreaker was the right choice. That's how good of a gun it was. Now, of course, as someone who mained a Titan, when the Rune Wings came out, the Gjallarhorn became almost always the right choice, but that's aside. The Icebreaker had the special ability that it was a sniper rifle that constantly regenerated ammo. Now, of course, the downside of this was that you couldn't actually pick up ammunition off the ground. However, like I said, it will just constantly regenerate ammo, even if it's out, even if it's stowed away and you're using your primary weapon all the time. This made it incredibly useful in basically every scenario. You always had an extremely powerful sniper rifle that you could basically count on. And what made it even better was that it was basically perfectly designed for boss battles at the time. Essentially, pretty much every boss battle in Destiny boils down to you putting damage on the boss for a short period of time. Maybe the boss's critical is exposed, maybe you don't have ads pressuring you at the time, so you get some damage on the boss, and then you have to stop damaging that boss, and likely you're going to have to go and deal with ads. This style of gameplay is again very common in most boss fights in Destiny, and it is perfectly suited for the Icebreaker. The Icebreaker, because it continually regenerated ammo, lets you take it out, get 6 shots on the boss's critical, put it away, go back to your heavy, go back to your primary, deal with the ads, and by the time you've dealt with the ads and have another chance to fight that boss, guess what? Your Icebreaker has regenerated ammo and is ready for another 5, 6, potentially 7 rounds on that boss. So again, how the Icebreaker was designed perfectly worked in with tons of the boss battles at the time and still currently in Destiny. When the Icebreaker was usable, it was mainly utilized in PvE because again it was so good against bosses, and it was very useful when you're doing higher level content. If you're doing a Nightfall, you never really had to venture out of cover to get more ammo because you had that constant regeneration, and it was the perfect weapon to peek out of cover because it was a sniper rifle, get some accurate rounds on the crit, and go back into cover, regenerate your ammo. And again, you never had to expose yourself to a boss that would had the same damage as the burn it was in the Nightfall, and you'd get melted very quickly. So the Icebreaker was perfect for that. But it always was utilized in PvP a decent amount too, because special ammo and getting it is very restricted in PvP. Obviously, the constant ammo regeneration was very, very good, and you'll still sometimes see people using Icebreakers currently in the normal Crucible when there's no level advantage. If the Icebreaker is finally brought back into Destiny with the Rise of Iron, it will be an absolute force to be reckoned with in both PvP and PvE especially. Moving on, another exotic weapon that hasn't yet been remade is the Pocket Infinity fusion rifle. This is a very unique, Warmind inspired fusion rifle, at least by the design, that features fully automatic fire. Now, of course, that is extremely unique for fusion rifles in the game, and this weapon definitely had its ups and downs. At one time, it was an absolute terror in the Crucible and actually had to get a pretty substantial nerf, really lowering its magazine size and introducing a lot more recoil, and since then it hasn't really been utilized a ton. But of course that's mostly because it became useless with the new leveling system and it was left behind. The funny part is that if you had a graph of this weapon's usage, it would have actually spiked hard right after the Taken King came out, which is weird because again it became useless, but it actually is because this weapon, the Pocket Infinity, because it is clearly Warmind inspired in its design, people thought that it may have something to do with getting the Sleeper Simulant exotic fusion rifle currently in the game. There was a big, search for the Sleeper. It turned out just to be a time-locked quest, which was very disappointing, but again, people were trying to figure out if there's some sort of secret way if you can do a mission, with the Pocket Infinity, because it and the Sleeper shared very similar Warmind themes, that perhaps the Pocket Infinity was the key to getting the Sleeper. So again, pretty funny that you have this huge spike in usage of all the people, doing these missions with the Pocket Infinity, trying to figure out if it's the way to get the Sleeper, but practically its usage has been very, very limited since its nerf. I think that the Pocket Infinity is extremely likely to be being remade in the Rise of Iron because there's no downside to doing so. Something like the Icebreaker, it is a very, very powerful weapon and could warp some metas, but the Pocket Infinity really doesn't possess that quality, and if anything, it's a little underpowered, so bringing it forward into the new meta really won't shake things up too much, and it's just nice to finally have a semi-new exotic to go for, especially if you're a player that joined Destiny after the Taken King. You probably won't have any use for this, you might not even have this at all. So expect to see the Pocket Infinity finally getting remade in the Rise of Iron. Now moving forward, we have two more exotic weapons that are stuck in Year 1, but both of these are associated with specific raids. The first, of course, is the legendary Vex Mythoclast. This was the exotic weapon to get for a very long period of time. Even after the next expansion, The Dark Below, came out, the Vex Mythoclast still remained one of the most desirable weapons in the game. And just look at it. It is so damn cool. Designed very similarly to a Vex Goblin's Blaster, this thing was just so unique. Although this weapon is technically a fusion rifle, it shot one bolt at a time, basically being a fully automatic scout rifle-y style of weapon. It was extremely unique and still remains extremely unique in Destiny. Very, very powerful off the beginning of Destiny. Actually, the recipient of Destiny's first kind of emergency nerf, getting this gun back into a reasonable power level because it just absolutely took over the Crucible in the first few weeks it was out, and people were finally starting to get it, and actually part of the first controversies involving, Bungie and Destiny, because they over-nerfed the crap out of this thing, especially since they nerfed it more than what they actually said they were going to nerf it by in the patch notes. They said they were only going to nerf it by I think 25 or 30%, and they nerfed it by 50%, which was, immediately obvious to anyone who tested the weapon. So that was actually kind of a little bit of a scandal when it happened, because Bungie didn't even respond to the fact that they did this for several months, finally upping this gun's damage a little bit more to make it decently competitive in the Crucible, and you'll still see the Vex Mythoclast utilized every so often. It also, aside from the Zalo Supercell, which is an arc-burning primary weapon, is the only other exotic primary weapon with an elemental damage, with the Vex Mythoclast, of course, possessing solar damage. So if it is ever reintroduced, expect it to have massive usage whenever there's a solar damage Nightfall or a solar damage heroic strike. And moving on, the last weapon stuck in year 1 in Destiny is of course the Necrochasm. This is the exotic weapon tied to the Crota's End raid. This weapon, although it looks really cool, and it was of course desirable as it was a new exotic that you could get in the game, never really had a time to shine. Like, never was even close to being as powerful as even the over-nerfed Vex Mythoclast. This thing was just always pretty underpowered. Maybe during some sort of meta for a couple of weeks, it was decently utilized by a little bit of people trying it out, but other than that, it never really saw a decent amount of play in either PvE or PvP. Which is unfortunate, of course, because it is one of the keystone exotics in the game, you know, being tied to one of the new raids, Crota's End, which of course was, you know, the key reason for buying the Dark Below, frankly, and that's actually why you're seeing gameplay of the Eidolon ally. Now, this weapon is the legendary weapon that you actually have to upgrade with the Crux of Crota that you need to get. It's a random drop in the Crota's End hard mode. Now, I actually just haven't gotten this. Even, you know, YouTubers like me can just be extremely unlucky. I've played the hard mode God know how many times, but I've just never actually gotten the Crux of Crota, and frankly, I don't have a huge desire to go back and get it, and that's kind of why I'm ending on the Necrochasm right now, is because there's no desire. I don't really have any sort of desire to go back, get a raid team together, really, although it might be something I maybe want to stream, and go and do Crota's End hard mode and hunt the Crux of Crota to finally get the Necrochasm. And that's a really sad thing. You have this great piece of content. Crota's End raid was by far the best part of the Dark Below, and the Necrochasm is a very cool weapon, but it was never really that good because it was just, you know, the recipient of poor meta choices at the time and bad buffs and nerfs impacting especially auto rifles, and mainly because, you know, as a Destiny player and looking back, it just kind of felt like this gun was never worth getting. It was not very powerful off the start, it was very underpowered, and then all of a sudden, as soon as it came out, it was useless because the new light system was introduced with the Taken King. And then of course, you know, why would you go back and get a weapon that is going to be not only underpowered in the Crucible, but just useless all around? That's kind of the sad things about leaving these exotics behind, and that's why I love to see the raids finally remade, and these two exotics, the Vex Mythoclast and the Necrochasm, finally updated in year 2. The April update shows how well things can go when you remake a piece of content. Although, you know, Challenge of Elders wasn't everyone's favorite, it made people go back, play the Prison of Elders, especially since it had matchmaking. People have spent a lot of more time in the Prison of Elders getting the new weapons associated with it and all of that stuff because it was remade. And although it is unlikely that we're going to see these two raids remade with the Rise of Iron, it is actually, I think, pretty likely that we will see these raids remade eventually in April update style of live updates. You know, perhaps a December update will come out in 2016 and finally update the Vault of Glass, and then we'll get, you know, a March update that finally updates Crota's End. Especially if we as a Destiny community ask for that, ask Bungie to do that, I think it's very likely to happen, because again, they literally remade an endgame piece of content, the Prison of Elders, with the April update, so I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for that same thing, but with the older raids, the Vault of Glass and Crota's End. And of course, updating these pieces of content will also update these two exotics, just like we saw the original Prison of Elders exotics, like the Queenbreaker's Bow, the Lord of Wolves, and the Drake's Promise, updated into year 2 with the April update. So those are the 4 exotics still stuck in year 1 of Destiny. Hopefully we'll see these updated soon with the Rise of Iron, especially the Icebreaker and the Pocket Infinity. Those 2 exotics are very likely to be coming back into Destiny with the Rise of Iron. And down the line before Destiny 2, hopefully we can see the Vex Mythoclast and the Necrochasm finally being remade as those raids that they are associated with are remade as well to rejuvenate Destiny. Now I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you want to see more Destiny content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. Now if you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description down below, as is my Twitch channel, which you can also follow. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day. One of the things I love to do when we get one of these streams, a gameplay reveal or something of the like, is I love to comb over the footage and analyze the new weapons and armor being added with this new content. And that's because I love the weapons and armor in Destiny. I'm a huge collector and it really interests me. So I'm bringing that to you guys today. I've combed over the footage and we're going to analyze some of the new armor sets, some of the new weapons, and even some new exotics being added with the Rise of Iron.